Nothing Sacred from 1937 was my VHS watch for the week. This stars Carole Lombard and Frederick March. This copy was purchased brand new, or new old stock, I guess you could say, but it still had the shrink wrap on it. I got this from Dark Side Records for a couple bucks, and I've been wanting to watch more Carole Lombard movies, especially after my last review of one of her films, which I didn't really like her character, who was kind of a pathetic drunken slob. In this movie, she plays a country girl who is mistakenly diagnosed as having terminal radon poisoning, I think. The point is she has a terminal illness, and her story is being covered by a disgraced reporter played by Frederick March. And what he doesn't realize throughout the whole movie is that she was misdiagnosed and she is not actually dying, and she and her doctor are kind of in on it and scheming just so she could get a trip to New York City. This movie explores what happens when a lie gets exploited on the big stage, because our character becomes kind of a celebrity and almost a saint, and they really push this to a hilarious degree. I'm a huge fan of both of our leads here. I love Frederick March, and of course I love Carole Lombard. This is one of those movies that I watched on VHS and it looked fine, but it is in full color, and this is one that I would love to see a more high quality version of the film, because there's some really cool aerial shots of New York City, and who doesn't want to see Frederick March punch Carole Lombard in the face in vivid color. Ronin from 1998 was unintentionally the second John Frankenheimer movie that I've covered in as many weeks. If you'd like to see my review of his 1966 film Seconds, check out my previous video. Ronin was a buddy watch with my friend Joe. We've been watching a lot of westerns together, but I said let's try a more modern action movie, and he was down. The plot revolves around our very secret cast of characters played by very high-profile actors and actresses who come together in a very clandestine cloak-and-dagger way to obtain the MacGuffin of this film, which is a hard-shell case that needs to be obtained by the person who's leading the group, who is played by Natasha McElhone, who you may know from The Truman Show. Now, unlike Seconds, which had some really deep themes that you could really chew on, Ronin is more of a by-the-numbers action movie, and there's really nothing wrong with that. If you like the kind of special operator spy thriller genre, this is a very serviceable movie with some real high points, including a few long car chases, a lot of gunfights, diverse personalities in the cast, and a really cool ending. There are a few elements that are a little half-baked. For example, the romance is very undersold, but I'm the kind of person who doesn't like a ton of romance, and especially sex scenes and love scenes in movies, so I'm kind of okay that the romance was a little half-baked in this movie. But also the whole concept of a Ronin and the title cards that have to explain it in the beginning kind of left me scratching my head as to why they felt they needed to do that. I think if they had just called that movie Get That Case or something, maybe it would have been less memorable, and that's why they did that. But I felt like the title and the concept of a Ronin don't really connect to anything by the time the story is over. But those are minor nitpicks. This movie, again, was really cool. It is in my DVD collection, and it will stay in the collection. The Intrigue from 1916 is a World War I spy thriller, science fiction movie directed by Frank Lloyd and written by Julia Crawford Ivers. This is a silent film that runs just over an hour. It is about a scientist who creates an X-ray, death ray kind of science fiction weapon that can kill a target at a very far distance. And so naturally, the powers that be want to get their hands on this weapon. And while certain European countries look to purchase the weapon from our scientists, the Germans look to steal it by subterfuge and coercion. Once again, I must remark that I don't know why I'm tiptoeing into the silent film genre when every single one that I've seen is pretty awesome, including this one, because it clocks in at just over an hour. You're never bored. There's always something going on. There are some elements that are kind of unexplained and don't make sense. Like, for example, in the beginning of the movie, the scientist gets a letter that the Americans don't want to buy the weapon. This could be for propagandistic reasons, but in the context of the plot, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And there are a few other elements like that. But all in all, I found this one to be highly enjoyable and intriguing. I think it's amazing that we can watch movies from this long ago and just see human beings and even animals on film that are long dead, and just imagine what the world was like back then. I definitely want to check out more silent films, so if you have a favorite, please recommend it to me. The Tale of Tsar Saltan from 1967 is a film from behind the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union, directed by Alexander Pushko and based on a Russian fairy tale by Alexander Pushkin. I recently watched another movie from this director called Ilya Muromets, also known as The Sword and the Dragon. I didn't cover that movie on this show, but that was also a fairy tale based fantasy film from the Soviet Union, obviously. And much like watching old silent films, I really get a kick out of watching movies from a time and place and a political ideology, let's say, that doesn't exist anymore, and how they chose to go about making movies. This story is about our Tsar who leaves his pregnant wife to go on a diplomatic mission, and the wife's ugly sisters who think they should have married the Tsar, and a few other people in his cabinet double-cross him by telling him that his wife gave birth to a horrible monster. So he sends back a message to have them cast into the sea. They survive this ordeal and kind of go their own way, and we get to see how the plot by the bad guys gets unraveled in the end. And because this is a fairy tale, everything ends happily. And this is a very fascinating movie to watch. Now, something occurred to me as I was watching this one, and it is that I love weird, wacky movies that are foreign to me, and I don't just mean from a different country. I just mean I want to see something that's different and crazy and odd and off-kilter and kitschy and weird. And I've seen many movies that fit that description, and this is one of them. However, when I watch a strange Hong Kong movie or some kind of wacky Japanese stuff, I'm usually cheering at the screen and thinking how cool and groovy it is. Whereas when I watch these Soviet films, I have this weird feeling that I wouldn't call discomfort, but there's something about them that just won't let me let my guard down and fully enjoy them. Maybe I'm thinking too much about the conditions in the Soviet Union and just wondering how the people were being treated at the time that the films were made. Maybe I'm creeped out by the animals in these quote-unquote fairy tales and how they're often portrayed by taxidermied puppets. But whatever it is, I can't fully immerse myself in these films sometimes. Now, there are exceptions. I really like Kin Zaza and I really liked Carnival Night. So maybe it's just the special effects on the fantasy type movies that are off-putting to me. But let's just say I watched this one on Canopy and I will not necessarily be picking up the Blu-ray, though I am extremely grateful that these films are easily accessible to anyone with a library card, and a lot of them are available on physical media from boutique labels like Deaf Crocodile. I love a movie that challenges me to find the words to talk about how I truly felt about it, and this is definitely one of them. And I think that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for watching to the end. If you like these short movie reviews that I do, there's a whole playlist of them on my channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.